Coming up on today's show, we're going to check out ESPN's latest 3-round mock draft from Todd McShay and Mel Kiper and see who they had the Falcons selecting in rounds 1, 2, and 3. So let's break it down and let's not waste any time. Let's get into the first pick, a top 10 selection for Todd McShay as they alternated picks. They went Christian Gonzalez, cornerback out of Oregon. So let's get to know the Oregon Duck a little bit better because we have talked about Christian Gonzalez for quite some time here on the channel. If you're subscribed, you know this. And I think this is a very good pick for the Falcons, and they can go a lot of different directions. I almost wouldn't even be all that mad if they went Bijan Robinson. But here's what Todd McShay said on drafting Christian Gonzalez. How about popping in Gonzalez, who has great speed, size, and ball skills, opposite AJ Terrell, The Falcons gave up 7.3 yards per pass attempt last season, 23rd in the NFL, but this duo could smother opposing receivers. We have seen a ton of smoke around Gonzalez going to Atlanta, to the point I don't know if it's Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, and all these other draft gurus believing if he's on the board, that is Atlanta's number one choice, and they just think it's a good fit, or if they've got word from Atlanta that, hey, Gonzalez is our number one guy. So we're just going to sit and wait in our war room and hope that he's there, and if he is, that's going to be the selection for Atlanta. Now, Gonzalez last season for the Oregon Ducks, 50 tackles, 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, and 1 tackle for loss. Usually, first round or second round corners either have great ball skills, but maybe not the greatest length or size, or vice versa. Christian Gonzalez has it both. He's got awesome skills and also great size that GMs are looking for. Here's how PFF graded him out last year, in case you're wondering. 83.3 overall, same for coverage and tackling, and he only gave up 3 touchdowns out in the Pac-12. So the idea of selecting a corner is somewhat growing on me, and Gonzalez is my number one cornerback in this draft class. Do the Falcons desperately need a corner for 2023? No. But is Atlanta trying to win a whole lot in 2023? I don't think no. I think also no. So for that reason, I'm looking for the future. And a future cornerback tandem of AJ Terrell and Christian Gonzalez is going to be tough to pass on. Now, a edge rusher would also be great here. But if Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson and let's say, I don't think Lucas Van Ness will be gone at that point. But if the 2 top 3 guys include Jalen Carter are off the board, maybe you just go strictly best player available, and that is Christian Gonzalez. Now, there are some other great corners in this draft class as well. Devin Witherspoon from Illinois and Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. These are likely going to be the first 3 corners that go in the NFL draft next week. So what do you think? Should the Falcons draft Gonzalez? D for draft or P for pass? Time for you guys watching right now at home to be the GM and let me know if you would like this pick. Now, if you're not sold on drafting Gonzalez, let me try and paint this picture for you guys here. AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward, Jeff Okudah, and Christian Gonzalez as this team's cornerbacks, right? With Mike Hughes maybe in the nickel a little bit. Now, Casey Hayward is likely going to be gone after this season. So if you recapture what was a top 5 pick in Jeff Okudah and pair him with A.J. Terrell, we're talking about 3 cornerbacks potentially this team moving forward. That would be a no-fly zone, and we're just talking about 2 right now specifically with Terrell and Gonzalez, right? You somehow resurrect Jeff Okudah's career. I don't know who the quarterback of the Panthers or the Bucks or even maybe the Saints is going to be for the next 5 or so years. But they're going to hate playing the Falcons twice a season because it will not be easy to move the ball down the field with just Terrell and Gonzalez at minimum. And if you spice in or toss in Jeff Okudah, and if he bounces back and even played somewhat decent last season for Detroit, that's going to be a really fun secondary for Atlanta. Moving on to the Falcons' next draft pick in ESPN's mock. This is Jonathan Mingo in round number 2. So Todd McShay made this selection as well, and he went with the Ole Miss wide receiver. Now, Mingo has sort of been this year's late draft bloomer where he hasn't played a snap of football in months, but somehow he is more popular right now than he was back when he was actually playing. And this happens every single year, where draft analysts just start building one guy up or tearing some guys down, despite not actually playing football for 4 months at this point. But he has been the late riser up draft boards. Now, Todd McShay had this to say on drafting Jonathan Mingo. If Atlanta is going to give Desmond Ridder a real shot to be its answer under center, then it better get him another pass catcher to complement Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Mingo is physical and can line up all over the offense. I've heard a lot of buzz around his name over the past month or so. The Falcons wide receiver room, I'm just not sold on. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Drake London is a great wide receiver one, I think. Matt Collins and Scotty Miller, if that's what Desmond Ridder is working with, we might as well agree we're not going to learn a whole lot about Desmond Ridder because he doesn't have a ton of targets to throw to. Wide receiver, corner, and edge rusher might not be that order of need, but wide receiver definitely needs some extra love in this draft class. Now, before we get to the rest of the draft selections, analysis, and breakdown, can we get to 12,000 subscribers by the time the NFL Draft rolls around? We're only 573 subs away. I know it's a bit of a big number, but hey, we've also crossed over 11,000 subs here at the channel, so what's 500 more? Hit that sub button for the best Falcons draft content. Mingo's stats last season for the Rebels, 861 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was a big playmaking machine. I remember the game against Vandy. He put up, I believe, over 250 yards. A lot of his catches resulted in big plays. He wasn't necessarily the most consistent go-to possession receiver, but then again, that's not really how Lane Kiffin's Ole Miss offense operated anyway. Now, Ole Miss wide receivers have had a pretty good track record in the NFL. I like the direction Elijah Moore is heading. A.J. Brown has been great so far. He's been awesome, actually. So there is something to, not quite wide receiver you, but maybe like almost wide receiver you. Now, when we look at his RAS, you guys know the deal when it comes to these things. You want a lot of green, and there is a ton of green around it. Speaking of green, on today of all days as well. So, Mingo is an outside wide receiver who is uber athletic. He's 6'1". He doesn't have blazing 40 speed. I think he ran a 4.46, but he is just a tough guy to bring down. Got really strong hands. If you throw it in his direction, he's going to find a way to get to the football. Now, I'm not crazy high on Mingo just because I don't understand how his stock has risen so much when he hasn't played a snap in 4 months. It's just one of those NFL draft stock risers at the last moment candidates. But hey, if the Falcons need to get a wide receiver, Mingo in round 2 is a pretty good option. So with that being said, speaking of the NFL Draft, here at Chat Sports, we have an exclusive NFL Draft YouTube channel that is waiting for you guys to discover when you go to youtube.com/chatnfl. That link's in the comments and the description of today's show. Moving on to our next mock draft pick here in round 3, Mel Kiper went Yasir Abdullah, the outside linebacker from Louisville. Now, Yasir Abdullah was a longtime starter for the Cardinals. The last 2 seasons, an extremely productive player. Now, he lined up as an outside linebacker in Louisville's 3-4 front. 10 sacks, 9.5 sacks in the last 2 seasons, 19.5 total. Crazy good production, right? He has no issue of actually converting pressures into sacks. The only knock that's sort of on Abdullah is he built to be an NFL outside linebacker, right? There's a bit of a difference when you're playing Wake Forest or Pitt versus when you're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Charlotte Panthers. Now, Mel Kiper had this to offer on his draft selection for Atlanta. If we're not giving the Falcons an edge rusher in the first 2 rounds after they finished 31st in the league with 21 sacks last season, we have to get them one here. The undersized Abdullah is intriguing. He is only 6'1", but he had 19.5 sacks and 35.5 total tackles for loss over the past 2 seasons. He is a good player. I think this is a very good 3rd-round pick. Round 2 is probably a bit too early for Abdullah, but he is one of those cases where people might say, nah, he's not going to be able to cut it in the NFL as a pass rusher or play outside linebacker. 6'1" and not even 250, that's not going to push the envelope. It worked in college, though, right? So it's one of those balances of he's found a way to do it so far in this collegiate career. If he can translate that to the NFL, This is an absolute steal for a third-round pick, right? How many third-round edge rushers had 19.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons? So if Atlanta can buy in on him just defying the odds and playing above his weight class, then this is a home run pick for the Falcons in round 3. Now, the Falcons linebacker depth chart here after signing Bud Dupree, you've got him, Lorenzo Carter, Arnold Ebiketie. I wonder if this team if a team rather that drafts Abdullah could see him more as an off-ball linebacker with really high pass rushing upside, right? More of a Troy Anderson or a Caden Ellis that, hey, let's bump him inside, but he's going to be one of the best blitzing inside linebackers in football. Honestly, I'm a big fan of this mock draft for Atlanta. I know that it didn't get them a pass rusher early on, and that might be something I live to regret. But at the same time, I'm crazy about Christian Gonzalez. I just think he's going to be a home run player wherever he goes. And then Jonathan Mingo in round 2, at least you're going to learn if Desmond Ridder is the guy. And then you add Abdullah, which I would have preferred adding edge rusher earlier on. But they have added some guys, and Bud Dupree helps a little bit, but still I don't think it's enough. I think this is a pretty solid mock draft for the Falcons. So be honest with me here. What is the biggest need for this team, right? When Atlanta is on the clock in round 1 a week from today, what position do you want to be read first? Do you want to be a cornerback who gets selected, a wide receiver, or an edge/outside linebacker? Chime in for me down below. So to recap this mock draft one more time, they went Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon in round 1. Round 2 is Jonathan Mingo, a wide receiver from Ole Miss. And then the Louisville uber-productive pass rusher, Yasir Abdullah in round 3. All 3 very good productive picks. Like, Christian Gonzalez is a home run pick in my book. Jonathan Mingo, he's got a lot of upside with his type of size and overall strength. And Abdullah, if he can kind of just bully his way into the league and just say no to the naysayers who say you can't be a good pass rusher at 6'1" and 230, 240 pounds, then you got 3 really good impact players in the first 2 days of the draft. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to everyone who has subscribed. And if you haven't already, you know the drill.